There, I am going to read Tapping into Kids' Creativity to Teach News Literacy from the website https://newslit.org. This was published on May 9th, 2023. Educator Mary Ellen Wessels realized that she has been teaching media and news literacy across grade levels and disciplines for some time. She just never called it that. Quote, "Honestly, it's only fairly recently that I've been aware that I'm teaching media literacy, but in reflection, even when I taught 4-year-olds, I tried to include media literacy," said Wessels, a humanities and civics teacher for grades 6 through 8 at Gate City Charter School for the Arts in Merrimack, New Hampshire, a nonprofit public charter school. When teaching preschoolers, she would introduce basic concepts in conversations largely built around visuals. For example, her class compared differences between toy ads, quote, "for boys," unquote, and those, quote, "for girls," unquote, or looked at how TV depicted people or events compared to real life. With middle school students, Wessels builds on their understanding of concepts from one grade to the next. 6th graders focus on becoming more aware of how media is used, asking questions around who is telling the story and why. 7th graders explore how primary sources might provide two different versions of the same story. By 8th grade, her classes are studying propaganda in a historical context. Students as media savvy creators. Quote, "I'm always trying to get students to think of themselves as creators, so I'm trying to make media literacy one of their civic duties. You need to use your media savvy," Wessels said. "When it comes to social media, I want my students to think critically and use it for positive things," unquote. And she believes news literacy can and should be taught across disciplines. She recently wove news literacy into her 8th grade ELA classes using NLP's Checkology virtual classroom lesson, Power and Art, the Watchdog Role of Editorial Cartoonists. It focuses on the history and current role of this important form of opinion journalism. Students created their own editorial cartoons based either on a line from the book Animal Farm by George Orwell or a current topic they cared about. Visit from editorial cartoonist. Wessels then invited Signa Wilkinson, a longtime editorial cartoonist at the Philadelphia Daily News, who was featured in the lesson, to a virtual classroom visit. She has been visiting classrooms in person and since the pandemic virtually for years and truly enjoys it. Quote, "Right before the pandemic, I went to a middle school in Malvern, Pennsylvania, and spoke to 4 or 5 classes in a row about cartooning generally," said Wilkinson, the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning. Quote, "It was fascinating because they don't get newspapers, so they don't see cartoons in the way I see cartoons," unquote. Her classroom conversations start with a quick history of communication through visual imagery, beginning with the first cave paintings and moving on to Martin Luther, the 16th century German theologian and Protestant reformist who used illustrated engravings to reach people who couldn't read. She also discusses the work of 19th century American cartoonist Thomas Nast and political cartoons from World War II before sharing her own drawings. Quote, "I don't want it to be all about me," unquote, says Wilkinson, whose work can be seen in the Philadelphia Inquirer. An empowering connection. Wessels said Wilkinson was engaging, and her students made the connection between using visual art and written language to persuade people and make them think. Quote, "Many of our students are naturally visual thinkers and artists, and a lot of them identified with how she struggled to pay attention in class, but always wanted to draw," unquote. Wilkinson told the class of the challenges she faced in establishing her career, noting that she was one of only a few women political cartoonists when she began, and the field remains male-dominated. Some students were surprised by the idea of creating cartoons as a career or the possibility that they could be an activist and use their voice and art at the same time. Quote, it is so empowering to have students get encouragement from professionals in the field, unquote, Wessel said. Wilkinson boiled down her message to this, quote, the main thing is to let kids realize that you don't have to just write news stories about what happens. You can use visual imagery for all sorts of things when you want to reach people in different ways, because people learn in all different ways, unquote. Educators, to arrange for Wilkinson to visit your classroom, contact her at, and leaves an email address. So there you go. I normally don't like to do commentary on articles, and it's not really a commentary on the article, but it brings up the idea of, some people using art for political messaging, and of course, tons and tons of people do that, and it's not anything new by any stretch, which I think this article does indicate. Personally, I'm not really personally motivated that way. I'm not much of a for political anything really. Um, there's just some things that I think like it doesn't really matter what your political posture is, what your ideology is, what your religion or not religion is, and blah blah blah. Wherever you are on the planet, the art that kind of speaks to the human experience, various states of the human mind and stuff. And I do tend to be kind of an elemental type where, and it could be just from my kind of, it might stem from some aspect of a kind of philosophical thought thinkery, um, and boiling things down to their most elemental nature. I'm always kind of reducing a problem. If somebody has a complex problem, I'm kind of the person that's going to reduce it down to its basic form because I think you get a better handle on it that way. And it's a kind of reverse engineering, but yeah, I'm kind of more interested in sort of transcendent art where um, it's getting past all of that kind of human vanity, as it were. Or the things that we fixate on is important from one day to the next, 1 year to the next, or whatever, are kind of sit on top of a basic human experience. So I don't have anything against people who use. See, to me, political cartooning isn't even really art. It's so much as it's cartooning or it's illustration. Um, it's yeah. I could totally strain the thin ice here. Everybody's gonna, I do cartooning, by the way. Before you decide to jump down my throat about that, um, but I do make distinctions about some things. And I think art in its purest mode can impact anybody, regardless, except maybe, well, maybe it probably didn't impact a psychopath, right? Because they don't have an onboard kind of, they don't have something in their brain that allows for them to feel things like empathy or sensitivity to others, that kind of, so, um, conversation like this wouldn't appeal to them to begin with. But anyway, yeah, so I kind of cartooning because cartooning it can be extremely simple and profoundly effective in terms of like communication, a specific type of message. Yeah. Um, so people who have a specific type of message that they're trying to push would be drawn towards something that allows them, the fastest method to do that. You know, um, I like when it comes to fast mediums. I would over cartooning. I'd prefer music that just instantly. I don't think that there's a creative process for me personally outside of that. particular medium that is as fast and as satisfactory, when you're done with the work. Um, and I've never understood people that claim to be like musical artists, artists who are terrified to go outside to push any limits. I can't even comprehend. It's like, how can you call yourself an artist? You're sitting there boxing yourself in to things can only be this way. That's again, that's not an artist's mindset. That's a psychopath's mindset. They need, steps to manipulate people. Um, so anyway, I don't really, yeah, I mean, these kinds of discussions are probably better had with other people of the similar mind. But I mean, like when it comes to music and stuff, there's the possibility for experimentation is vast. That's whether it's experimenting with rhythm, experimenting with melody, or experimenting with lyrics. Um, and not not being willing to do that, not being willing to also if you're not capable of setting your ego aside, fuck you. We will never ever work together. Never. I don't have time for that kind of bullshit. Okay, you get some people that they have plenty of time in their lives for bullshit. I don't. No interest in it whatsoever. Um, and by the way, for a particular subscriber, I wanted to let you know that sketch I put up, which I never, ever, ever do, and almost instantly regretted doing. I completed that and sold it. So I appreciate your having liked it. It's finished. No, I won't upload the finished product. I make agreements with people that buy, and I stick to them, and so do they. And so that's that. All right. Uh, yeah. So I mean, I think that this is a good website, the News Literacy Project. They're just trying to. Um, I think that's a good thing to put your efforts towards. Make sure that kids or anybody vulnerable, people that just, people who've never been to college, maybe they didn't complete high school for whatever, it doesn't matter why, blah, blah, blah. It's irrelevant, okay? It's possible to comprehend and learn to recognize kind of basic propaganda techniques, disinformation techniques, and so you don't need a college degree to learn all that. To create it, it helps, but to be able to recognize it, no. If children can recognize, legitimate news, credible news, so can you. So, you just have to, this is a good site to become educated on that. Let me see if I can. You get a home page where there we go. So they've got a podcast. They tell you what their mission is. They're building a movement, world press freedom, news literacy in the age of AI. So it's just basically, this is all offered up free. You can donate if you want to. You don't have to, but this is just to help people educate themselves so that they're not playing into the hands of people with political or socio-political agendas of some kind or any kind. I mean, this applies even to stuff like, selling cars and toothpaste. So if you learn how to, if you educate yourself on how to identify this, you're a lot less gullible. There's a lot of gullible people, and never ever underestimate the ability for a human being to believe in the absurd. Okay? There's an old saying, if you can be convinced to believe in absurdities, you can be convinced to commit atrocities. Some people know this and they do it anyway. Isn't that sad? Who would do that? I can't think of any type of personality except possibly the psychopath. See you later.